Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I am diving into the second season of the Invasions mode. And by diving into Invasions mode, I mean it is time for me to condense my playthrough of the entire season, which is about 7 hours worth of footage that has been taken down to a little bit over an hour, I think. Maybe, possibly, we will see whenever I am done with this voiceover. Now, I played through Season 1 and turned that into a 2-part episode, and I am hoping that I will be able to make this season much shorter.
The Nitara who now vexes us is from one of the few timelines where Veternians, when they discovered other timelines, and the failure of Veternians within them to flourish, this Nitara's Veternians mobilized for war. They plan to liberate every timeline's vampires and set them on a path to conquest. If they are not vanquished, they will enslave all beings to Veternis.
The point of the Invasions mode is that some powerful alternate dimension version of some main roster character, well, they are invading and they are trying to wreak havoc on the area, either taking it over or trying to destroy it. Last season, we had to beat the alternate dimension version of Scorpion who was invading. This time around, we need to take down the invading version of Nitara, and this is, I believe, considered the Season of the Blood Moon. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty long video, so let's go ahead and jump into it. This might be the only time that I do this, but I will at least show one of these survive modes, and we'll do the same thing for Test Your Might. That way we at least get to see the mini-games one time or twice throughout this entire playthrough. For this season, I am switching up the main character and cameo character that I will be using. In the first season, I used Reptile and the cameo fighter Serena. This time around, I am going to be using Nitara and the cameo Subzero. Now, I liked the idea of seeing who is better, our Nitara from this dimension or the invading Nitara. Plus, when looking over the type chart for Invasions mode, Nitara is a blood type, and blood types resist other blood type attacks. So using Nitara versus Nitara did not put me at a disadvantage, at least not as long as I focused more on physical attacks than I did on my blood-related special attacks. And now we are entering our very first fight of the Invasions mode, or at least the very first one that I am showing off because I have been doing lots of fights in the background that I have just been cutting out of the video so far. What makes this fight so special and not the other ones? Well, this is the very first mini-boss of the Invasions mode. So yeah, this random geras happens to be a mini-boss for this stage. They are only marginally more difficult getting armor on certain attacks, and usually coming in 2 phases where if you deplete their life once, it refills and suddenly they get a little bit more difficult and you have to deplete the life bar one more time or possibly more depending on the boss. To change things up just a little bit further, I will also be having a finisher checklist going throughout the Invasions playthrough. Now, I have not unlocked any brutalities or fatalities for Nitara or the cameo Sub-Zero prior to this season of the Invasions mode. So I'm starting off with just the default stuff, and I'm going to need to unlock the rest as I progress. My goal is to get every Nitara and cameo Sub-Zero finisher by the time I fight the final boss. I don't know if that's technically going to happen or is possible, but I'm going to give it a shot. And it is worth mentioning that pretty much every spot on the map that I stop on is a fight, and very few of them do anything other than kill time. Since there are way too many fights in the Invasions mode that really just do not matter, the only fights that I am going to be showing off are the ones where I get one of those finishers, happens to be a boss fight, or happens to be where I get a key item. I will also be changing how Nitara looks periodically. I'm going to try and do that at least once every level to mix things up just a little bit. I don't think I did that at all with Reptile in the previous video, and it kind of felt like a missed opportunity considering how long I was playing as Reptile. We could have seen a few different skins for him, even if he didn't really have a whole lot of good options back in Season 1. Though while traveling through the map, I found that there is a locked gate, and I do not have the key item needed to unlock that gate. So now I am backtracking through the map to find the point where I can unlock that key item. And that is going to be right here with this Test Your Might challenge. We'll go ahead and show that off and get that key item and progress through the rest of the invasion mode. And that key item is called a monk key. Monkey. Oh god, I love some good wordplay. Nicely done, nicely done. Alright, let's go ahead and get that gate open and progress on to the final platform of this first level. There we should be able to take on the first level boss and then progress on to the very next stage.
It infuriates me when evil magic corrupts good souls. I sense that even now, Raiden tries to free himself from Nitara's spell. Fight him, but do not finish him. I will not have him lost to us forever.
Also, I did not practice with Nitara prior to starting this season of Invasions mode. Even so, not long prior to this playthrough, I was using Nitara in the Combat League. So even if I am a bit out of practice, I am at least somewhat familiar with what I can do with her. I just might be a little bit rusty and I might not remember every combo and special attack input immediately. Or the timing just might be off on a few things. So you will see a little bit of trial and error early on in the Invasions mode, but by the end of it, I should be much better than just, fumbling around trying to get results early on. Now I have been cutting it out of the video so far, but I have also changed my stat distribution for this season. Before I had my stat points automatically being applied whenever I leveled up. This time around I am doing that manually. For Season 2 and 3 I have had the same approach for this. Whenever I start the season I put every point that I receive into the attack stat until I hit around 110 or 120 attack. Then I just put everything else into health and defense. I find the Invasions modes a lot easier whenever you just put everything into the offensive stats early on. You get to the point where you're basically killing any non-boss related enemy in just a few combos and it really speeds everything up. So I am gambling a little bit going ahead and taking Nitara into this boss fight against Raiden because, well, as you can tell by Nitara's wings, she is a flying type Pokemon. And Raiden is the Thunder God, so clearly he is a lightning type. And lightning is super effective against flying. Or at least that is what Pokemon has taught me. Then again, this is Mortal Kombat, so let me go ahead and reevaluate the situation. Nitara is a blood type and Raiden is still an electric type, so I guess that still fits. Anyway, by Mortal Kombat logic, the blood type is weak to electric type, so I don't really have any advantages taking Nitara into this boss fight, and I have not leveled her up very much, so this one is going to be a bit of a struggle. In fact, it is so much of a struggle that I can't even get Raiden into the final phase of the boss fight. I kind of just got destroyed in that one. So I think I'm going to need to take a moment and level up, because I don't see a scenario where I'm going to win at this low of a level with a type disadvantage. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and seamlessly cut to after I have fought some additional battles, picked up some items like a talisman and a relic, and just maybe some things to help me push my way through this stage boss. Things should get a lot easier after this. And alright, I went ahead and did all those extra battles and picked up a talisman. I don't think I have a relic equipped after all. I didn't really find one that was useful, but I went ahead and did all of that, and now I'm already fighting Raiden again, so fortunately for anyone seeing this, I got to skip out all of the grinding, and I don't really think I really benefited all that much from it. I think I only gained one level. So even though I was hoping to get a little bit of an advantage with some higher stats going into this fight, I don't think it's going to be that much of a factor. I think I'm just going to have to play as well as I possibly can and try to maybe just barely pull this thing out at the end. I don't know. Maybe it'll go more smoothly than I think it will, but I have my doubts. And yeah, this one is kind of rough. It seems like I'm struggling to get any meaningful damage against Raiden, and it seems like every single time he hits me, even if it's a really simple combo, I'm losing like 25% of my health or so, and it's just not looking great. Making things a little bit more challenging, he is in that second phase where he starts to do just damage over time to you, purely by you being in proximity to him. He doesn't have to do anything to me, and I'm still losing health. I don't think this combo is going to finish him off, but afterwards it should only take about 1 or 2 more hits, and then we are going into the third and I think final phase of the fight, which is fortunate. I don't think I'm going to be able to hold out more than maybe a third phase. If there were a fourth one, I think I'd be fucked. Okay, I spoke too soon. I may be fucked no matter what. I'm blocking and I'm going to be already down to like 50% health. There's no way I'm going to win this. I guess Desperation Talisman? Alright, it is a squirrel, a taxidermy squirrel with a chainsaw and a hockey mask on a Roomba. That might be the single greatest talisman of all time. I never used these, and that is absolutely amazing, and that is what saved us. Oh my goodness, thank you, my squirrely little friend. Well, alright, at least we got the boss fight over with, and thanks to losing to him, before, it did delay me a little bit. I spent longer on the first level than I would have liked to have, but we're still making good enough progress, I think. I mean, we're only about 10 minutes into this thing, so we're not doing too bad. And now we're proceeding on to the next level. And for that, we are returning to Outworld for the first time in Season 2, and we're going to the Sundo Festival. And now that I'm looking back on this in comparison to Season 1, it kind of feels like most of the stages are just, the same thing, except whatever was nighttime before is now daytime, and then whatever was daytime before is now nighttime. Granted, we haven't gotten to a stage that is nighttime yet, but we were just on a stage that was night before, and now we're on another stage that was night before, and both of them have been in the daytime, so I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that is going to be the gimmick going forward. Alright, if we shuffle around the letters of this clue, we get the words batshit crazy, which ironically, since we are using Nitara, we can go ahead and do this and unlock this area, because the requirement, I believe, to get past this based on the clue is to do Nitara's fatality. And the fatality I am referring to is the Viternus Combat. So let's go ahead and get in there and get this thing knocked out. Oh, and I'm just now remembering that whenever Liu Kang did the intro dialogue for Raiden as the stage boss, he specifically gave us the request to not finish Raiden, to not put his buddy Raiden in a deceased status. And then we proceed on to have Sub-Zero, remove his head. So, yeah, we did not really follow through on that request. Not to worry though, in the very first playthrough I did for Season 2, I did let Raiden live and I did not do any sort of a finisher, and it did not change the outcome whatsoever in comparison to my playthrough whenever I did do a fatality to that character. So yeah, it does not matter what you do for Raiden. The end result is going to be exactly the same. Alright, and with that out of the way, we can now check Viternus Combat off of the finisher list that we are using to keep track of, Sub-Zero and Nitara's fatalities and brutalities, and yeah, we can also unlock that secret area and get those items. So far, so good. There are a pretty good amount of those hidden areas where you get clues that give you an idea of how to unlock them. And pretty much every single time it's going to be you going into the battle and having to finish it with a very specific finisher each time. Or occasionally you have to just use a move a certain number of times. You probably will not see me doing too many of those throughout this playthrough because I'm trying to just get to the very end and fight the final boss and get to see that cutscene as quickly as I can. The only reason I did that one specifically is it just so happened to coincide with the character I chose to use during this season. But hey, we might get lucky and find another one of those hidden areas, and it'll be pretty convenient to go ahead and get, and in the event that occurs, we'll go ahead and show that one too. And coming up next is a mini-boss, and I think the only mini-boss here in the second level. That mini-boss is going to be Shangtsung. So in the very last level, for the actual stage boss, not the mini-boss, but the big bad of that area, we had to fight Raiden. And the summary that Liu Kang gave us implied that that was actually our dimension's Raiden. Only he had been afflicted by the magic of the vampires, the Veternians, the invading Nitara. And now he was basically possessed by the blood magic, something along those lines. I don't think that comes up a whole lot for the rest of this playthrough, but it is a nice touch that they could have done a little bit more with. The idea that a bunch of our allies are now being infected by whatever blood curse is going on, and then suddenly we're having to actually fight our own allies as opposed to versions of them from another dimension. That's just kind of a pretty decent idea overall, but they don't really do a whole lot with it. Like, I'm pretty sure if I went back and just started this all over again, I could have just used Raiden to fight off supposedly our dimension's Raiden, so our dimension's Raiden be fighting himself essentially. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's a nice idea. It would have been cool to see them actually do a little bit more with it, but I learned my lesson after the very first season of Invasions mode. There were a lot of really decent ideas that just don't really go anywhere or are not explored nearly enough, and instead it's just a gigantic grind. Season 2 does not stray away from that all that much, and yet again we are just grinding out a bunch of battles in order to try and reach the end. At least in the very first level we got an explanation for why we were fighting Raiden. There are going to be stage bosses like the stage boss for this level that get zero explanation for why we are fighting them. It seems like, the boss for that stage that you have to beat in order to progress on to the next level might be kind of important and worth a little bit of dialogue, but no. Only a select few are, and this stage does not have one of those important ones. And now I can just go ahead and check off the embrace the pain brutality for Nitara as well. This isn't like very important or impactful or anything, but I do kind of find it funny that whenever you defeat Shangtsung as a mini-boss, you unlock gear for Reptile, not Shangtsung. And I guess just a really minor spoiler alert, because it doesn't really matter a whole lot. The stage boss for this level is going to be the alternate dimension or blood-infected version of Reptile. It could be either one, but like I said earlier, no one bothers to explain why I'm fighting that reptile, so you're just kind of left to guess. No one cared enough to explain it, and I guess I kind of don't care enough to know it as a result. And whenever you defeat the stage boss of Reptile, you don't get any reptile gear. You get the Shang gear. So I feel like someone somewhere made a mistake and gave the wrong gear to the wrong boss on this level. They just got them mixed up to where you were getting the opposite boss's gear. Just kind of a funny thought. And now we are just getting a little cluster of fights after skipping so many throughout the playthrough so far. Next up we are going to be fighting against Smoke, and this isn't really a special version of Smoke. It's not like a mini-boss or anything, it's just a regular opponent. But the one thing that does set this Smoke apart enough for me to highlight in a fight is the fact that you have to beat this person in order to get the key to progress to the next part of the stage, and then ultimately to get away from the stage. So he has the key item that we need. And why exactly does Smoke have a key item that we need? Your guess is as good as mine. Because this is just another one of the many things that the Invasions mode does not explain. Like they don't explain why we fight the stage boss in this level, and they're also not going to explain why anyone has any of the items that they drop in this level either. We don't know if Smoke mugged somebody and took a key. We don't know if this is an alternate dimension Smoke that maybe possibly does not want us to progress for some stupid reason. We don't know. For all we know, we were just hallucinating this crap and we had the key the entire time. So similar to Season 1 of the Invasions mode, it's just fight a bunch of people, like hundreds of enemies, and maybe some of them will drop something useful that you need in order to get to the next part of a level. It's a complete guessing game and there are no hints as to why or who they would be and why they'd be holding the key item to begin with, so good luck, I hope you enjoy the grind. And I talked about this a good amount in the Season 1 episodes, but it just feels like wasted potential whenever you don't explain important events in your game mode. Like right now, we're just aimlessly fighting hundreds of enemies. Breaking that up with a few important ones, actually giving all of the boss characters just a little bit of dialogue. If you didn't want to pay the voice actors, that's fine, just put some text up on the screen if you want. But give us a reason for why we are doing what we are doing. Explain to me why fighting a person is so damn important. Let us know what happened with these key items and why they are important. And elaborate on why the person who has that key item took it or is in possession of it to begin with. Like letting us know that someone somewhere has this key item actually gives us a goal to try and achieve. It actually keeps us invested in the game mode. I don't know, I just kind of feel like this mode should have been a lot better. It has a lot of potential that's just not really being tapped into. The idea of fighting off some invading force that's unique every single season should give a person plenty of reason to revisit a game, and give it some sort of replay value because you're starting to get new stuff every couple of months. Instead though, we get this. And I just really don't want to be fighting against a computer hundreds of times with little or no significance to the fights. Similar to Season 1, I enjoy the first cutscene. And whenever we get to the very end, I enjoyed that cutscene too. But then there is just like 6 hours of nothing in the middle. And I'm trying to make it as interesting as I can. You know, little things like the finisher list. And just commentating on everything and pointing out the unique little things I see. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot going on in this mode, and I cannot blame anyone for not wanting to do anything with it. Feel like the only reason that you would want to do invasions mode is to just get some seasonal credits so you can go purchase some gear, go into those secret areas like the one we saw earlier and unlock some of the gear in those areas, and maybe just to grind up your character's level so that you can unlock some other finishers. Kind of like how I'm unlocking finishers for Nitara as I progress. Everything I just rattled off, that's not fun. That is just grinding to get resources so that you can actually get the things that kind of make the game fun. And I went ahead and checked, I didn't even get every single finisher by the time this playthrough was over. I end up missing out on one of the subzero finishers, I never unlock it. So you could spend about 7 hours in invasions mode just grinding up your characters so that you could do all the things that you want to do with them, and it's still not enough. So not only is this mode just a constant grind and it kind of sucks, it's still so grindy that you don't even necessarily get everything that you want by the time it's over. They have got to do something more with invasions mode. And I have plenty of more thoughts on that, but I'll go ahead and put them on hold for just a moment. We are now on level number 3, which is going to be the Living Forest. Which I talked about how they kind of switched around the day and night cycles for the levels based on doing the opposite they did on Season 1. Although, I don't really think there was a change for the Living Forest. I think it looks exactly the same as it did before, so I guess it is an exception to that rule. But yeah, what was I saying about complaining about invasions mode? Right, there's no reason for anything that you're doing. Like, there are no objectives. You just continue to fight, and then you hope you are going in the right direction and you progress to the next level and just continue to fight until you eventually reach the final boss. That is it. Whenever I first looked at invasions mode, I kind of expected a dumbed down version of the conquest from Mortal Kombat Deception. And in Mortal Kombat Deception, you played as the protagonist Shujinko, and it was kind of the same thing that we're doing here, except it was a little bit more open world. You weren't going, from pad to pad. You could actually just walk around and talk to people. But the concept's kind of the same. You go to different locations, you try to find key items, you fight a bunch of random fights. Well, kind of random. They at least give you some reasons for why you're fighting the people, but we all know you're mostly just wasting time until you get to the next part. And then eventually you face off against some pretty challenging main roster characters in order to progress the story. Now, it did not have to be anywhere near as in-depth as what Deception did, but if you're going to do some grindy crap like that, you could kind of just take a page from what you already did in that game and then just give us little reasons for everything that we're doing. Even like I said earlier, if it's just a text on the screen that gives you an objective, at least you're working towards something and you know what you're trying to do. This mode, on the other hand, just feels like it is designed to waste your time. And since it is released seasonally, you would think that they could possibly take the time to correct this, but as of Season 3, which is the most recent one that I've played and recorded and I haven't released yet, yeah, I haven't seen any really major improvements, so I guess we'll just keep holding out hope that maybe Season 4 is better. Oh, and I guess I should go ahead and point that out too, because whenever I'm doing the voiceover for this, it's nowhere near the time that this video is going to be released. Like right now, I'm doing this voiceover in January. I have no idea when this video is coming out because these videos for the invasions mode is supposed to come out after I do the story mode for Mortal Kombat 1. So if I'm saying anything that has since been corrected or is contradictory to how the game is whenever you are viewing this episode, just know I was recording this in January of 2024. And I really hope the crap I am complaining about has in some way improved. But I will take a break from the complaining about the mode and how it could have been better. Let's go ahead and focus on what I am doing. I went ahead and switched my cameo fighter temporarily to Sonya. And that's because I'm trying to unlock another hidden area which requires you to do Sonya's Fatality. I didn't know that I was going to do any more of these hidden area level parts, but it had been a little while since we did our last fight, so we kind of needed to break up the monotony of just wandering around the map, so here we are fighting and unlocking a new area. So thank you, Sonya. And just like that, we got a bonus fatality from the cameo Sonya. That'll be it for her. I'll go ahead and switch her out after we go ahead and get out of this fight and unlock the chest behind that hidden area. which just contains some additional gear for Geras and Tanya. You are probably going to see me spacing out the fights a little bit more going forward. That way I can just try to get through the map as quickly as I can in order to try and get this wrapped up as quickly as possible. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I will only be stopping for the mini bosses and main bosses and key items, so fortunately we should be able to get through these levels at a pretty brisk pace. And speaking of mini bosses, next up we have Kenshi. And now that I am thinking about it, I have not struggled against any of the bosses, whether they were mini bosses or stage bosses, since I fought Raiden in the very first level. After how smoothly everything went in the very first season of the Invasions mode, I would not have thought that type difference would have made that big of a difference in that fight, but well, turns out having the weakness to lightning really caused me to struggle in that one, and whenever I don't have a type weakness to my enemies, things are going really easily. So even though these guys are supposed to be bosses, they really haven't been too much of a problem, and the only time I'm ever struggling is when I just make things harder on myself, apparently. And now I am looking at how I edited all this footage down and reduced it as much as I could from its original 7-hour-ish runtime. And it looks like overall the footage is going to be about an hour and a half long, which is still a lot better than 7 hours, and even better than the Season 1 episodes, which were roughly 2 hours put together. So I managed to shave off 30 more minutes than I did last season, which is not nothing. But it's still pretty long for what this is. So yet again, I'm going to be breaking this up into 2 episodes, roughly 40 to 45 minutes each, something like that. Which is a bit of a bummer. Whenever I cut out all the fights and then sped up the walking around animation on the main map, I was really hoping I'd be able to get it around that hour mark, and exceeding that by about half an hour is a bit of a bummer. But that's alright, we're going to get through this as fast as we can, and hopefully the cutscenes and the boss fights will be worth all the effort. And during this boss fight, I am trying to get the Taste of Blood brutality for Nitara. It's one of the hardest ones to get for Nitara just because everything kind of has to line up just right. For that one, you have to be about jumping distance or more away. You have to have Blood Sacrifice active because it's the only time you can do her Bloody Bolt attack or Blood Bolt attack. And that's what you have to do to activate the brutality. And you're just really counting on the opponent to be in just the right spot whenever that really slow projectile hits them, and that's assuming they don't dodge it or block it in some way. Or in the case of what just happened on screen, it hits them, but because they were moving, they moved out of the approximate distance that I needed them to be in for the brutality to happen, so even though I did everything right, they moved, and I still don't get the brutality. And since that one is a bit tricky to get, I was doing my damnedest to try and get it in this fight. And unfortunately, I don't. And since I was going for it, and I didn't really have any other fatalities or brutalities to do, I just went ahead and finished off the fight and did a repeat of the Veternus combat fatality. So even though we did not end up getting the Taste of Blood brutality, it is something that I am going to be trying to get a very good amount, and hopefully we will be seeing it here in the very near future. So earlier in the episode, I went ahead and explained why I went with Nitara as my main character for Season 2. My logic was I thought it'd be kind of funny to see Nitara versus Nitara, seeing who the truly best Nitara was. But what I did not explain was why I chose Subzero as the cameo. There are no funny reasons like fighting the alternate dimension version of yourself when it comes to Subzero. I picked Subzero purely from a gameplay perspective. And the way I like to play Nitara is I'd like to take every opportunity to get a free setup of the Blood Sacrifice. So that works out pretty good whenever you use Sub-Zero or Frost because you can freeze the enemy. And anytime they are frozen, assuming that you're close enough, you can get the Blood Sacrifice off, start a combo, do a meter burn version of the quick taste attack, and whenever you do the meter burn version of that, it kicks the opponent in the air so that you can continue your combo. And whenever you have Blood Sacrifice active and you do that quick taste attack, it also gives you health back. So not only are you getting a combo extension, you're recovering. So you kind of have a regenerator Nitara.
I had not thought it possible, But the Verternian magic which corrupts Mileena has somehow made her even more vicious. Despair not if you must kill her, or she would think nothing of eating you alive.
Jeez, Liu Kang, what a dick. You go out of your way to tell us, no, don't kill Raiden. I don't care if he's infected with blood magic by Nitara and the other invading Veternians. I can't lose him, he's my buddy. But then Mileena is infected, and you're like, you know what? Fuck it, go ahead and kill her, who cares? If you have to do it, don't feel bad about it. Like, really? Y'all did save the world together. Seems like you could care just a little bit more, Liu Kang. Just a little bit. But anyway, what was I talking about? Right, Nitara has some good methods for getting health back. The one I usually find myself going with is just blood sacrifice into quick taste, meter burn, continue your combo. It's pretty effective. And there are other things that you can do to get health back as well, like if you do the blood sacrifice and then meter burn it, you are just passively getting your health back from the opponent anyway, just by being close to them, which if you froze them, then you're going to be pretty close to them anyway. So even then, you are getting health back by just being next to them, and then you can still do quick taste and get even more health back while extending your combos, and it's just a really fun concept. It keeps you in the fight longer, and it just chips away at your opponent in a pretty good way with Nitara. I'm not going to go ahead and say that that's the very best way to play Nitara, I have no idea. But it's the way I found that I had the most fun or enjoyed playing Nitara the most. And it ended up being pretty effective whenever I was doing my Fatal Friday videos. Frost and Subzero are the cameos I used for every single finisher. So, I mean, it works. And since this is the level boss, they're going to be a little bit tougher to take down than just your regular enemies or your mini bosses. So I'm not going to mess around trying to get the taste of blood brutality here, I'll save that for later. Instead, I fortunately have a good alternative. In one of the random fights I had to go through in order to get to this point, I ended up unlocking another finisher for Nitara. And the other finisher happens to be her second fatality, which is titled Break Check. We're going to go ahead and get that Break Check fatality going to highlight that, show it off a little bit, enjoy it, and get it checked off of our list. And with the stage boss Mileena out of the way, we are able to go ahead and proceed on to the very next stage, which I believe is going to be Shangtsung's laboratory. So we're going to be staying in the Outworld area and getting that much closer to facing off against the Nitara boss for the entire thing. Granted, we still have a ways to go for that, but hey, we are getting closer. And on that note, I kind of have to consider where I'm going to be breaking up these episodes. I think what I'm going to try to do is reach the end of Shang laboratory and then cut it off and then start the next episode at the very beginning of the stage that takes place right after that. That is going to be my plan for right now, but we will see if the clock cooperates and we don't go over about 45 minutes by too much. But yeah, we will see what happens. So while we make our way to the end of this episode, I guess I'll go ahead and just peel back the curtain and do a little bit of transparency about how things are working on my side at the moment. So between the recording from when I was fighting the boss Mileena and now, I think like 2 or 3 weeks has passed. It's February now. In fact, it is Groundhog Day, so kind of forgot that was a thing. Although now that I'm thinking about it, that is super appropriate for this episode because after all, we managed to beat the boss version of Raiden with the little gopher with a chainsaw and a Roomba. We'll go ahead and remove the word gopher there. We're going to pretend that was a groundhog, and then suddenly this is a very holiday appropriate episode, even though I'm recording this on multiple different days, one of which is Groundhog's Day, and the video itself is probably not going to be released till like June or something. So sure, I'll call it a holiday episode, even though it's all over the place really. So yeah, why not? But I will go ahead and put aside my rambling about the wonderful holiday that highlights rodents that live underground, and I'll go ahead and focus on the matter at hand because I'm about to kick off the mini-boss fight against Sub-Zero. And Sub-Zero was a mini-boss back in Season 1 as well. And just like that boss back in Season 1, actually he was a stage boss, not a mini-boss, but whatever. He was a boss in both Season 1 and Season 2. And in both cases, There's zero explanation to why we are fighting him. Now, this was much more egregious back in Season 1 because he was a stage boss, but you know what? I'd like some explanation here too. I kind of feel bad for Sub-Zero because he's not getting an explanation. I mean, we're over here beating the crap out of this guy, fatalitying him, maybe brutalitying him on 2 separate seasons, and we don't even know why. He is just anonymously getting his ass kicked. Now, granted, that's going to change in Season 3 because, well, he's going to be the main character for Season 3. I guess I'll go ahead and spoil that if you want to call it spoiling that, because this is going to be released, like, well after that's irrelevant. But yeah, Season 3, Sub-Zero is the big bad invading boss. So he eventually gets an explanation, but you know what? Season 1 and Season 2 Sub-Zero, they deserve better, damn it. So while the battle with Sub-Zero rages on, let's go ahead and I guess cover a topic I have not talked about too much in depth, at least besides, you know, a little bit during the story mode playthrough. How are we feeling about Bi-Han being Sub-Zero again? Because the thought crossed my mind, and I hadn't really given it too much thought prior to now, but Bi-Han has been Sub-Zero in less main-numbered Mortal Kombat games than he has been Noob Saibot. Like, Bi-Han was Sub-Zero in the very first Mortal Kombat game, but, you know, he was killed by Scorpion. And after that, he wasn't Sub-Zero again until the whole franchise was rebooted in Mortal Kombat 9, and he was only Sub-Zero for like 5 minutes in that game. And now here, in Mortal Kombat 1, he is once again Sub-Zero. So yeah, he has been Sub-Zero like 3 times. Although Mortal Kombat 9 is a little bit iffy, we'll call it like 2.25. Whereas whenever it comes to Noob Saibot, I'm going to go ahead and look at just the playable entries where he was Noob Saibot. We had Mortal Kombat 3, well, like the ultimate version of it, or trilogy, or, you know, whatever, 3. You had him in Mortal Kombat Deception, you had him in Mortal Kombat Armageddon, you had him in Mortal Kombat 11. Oh, right, Mortal Kombat 9 again. Because after the first 5 minutes where he's Sub-Zero and Scorpion kills him again, he is Noob Saibot for the rest of the game, so yeah. So he was Noob Saibot in 5 games and Sub-Zero for 2.25. And it's funny because I really don't think about that too much, but yeah, he has been Noob Saibot substantially more than Sub-Zero, and now suddenly he's getting the push as Sub-Zero again. It makes you wonder what they're going to do if they ever want to introduce Noob Saibot again in this storyline for Mortal Kombat 1. It's a total guess, but I imagine if they were going to do it, one thing that they could do, since they went out of their way to really emphasize this whole Bi-Han killing his father thing, they could make his dad Noob Saibot. Like, say his deceased father that he murdered gets the same deal that he got in the old timeline whenever he became Noob Saibot, whenever Quan Chi made him Noob Saibot. And then you get an entirely new character being Noob. You get a noob being Noob. Stupid joke, but whatever. I mean, he was the head of an assassin clan that was designed to protect the entire world. He could be a pretty competent fighter. I'm sure, especially since he was murdered, he would want revenge. So, yeah, why not? Make him Noob Saibot. And if you do that, thanks to even more changes that were made in Mortal Kombat 1, the DLC could be the Battle of the Fathers. We're talking about King Jared and the Ermac body fighting whoever the hell Bi-Han's dad is now being Noob Saibot. Or you could have that duo pairing up and being antagonists, alright? Evil dads. Now all this, definitely, probably not going to happen. I'm just rambling, but it's a fun thought, okay? Especially if they have no intention of making Bi-Han Noob Saibot again, which, I mean, they could, but I don't really see it happening in this game. I mean, why would you have the same guy being 2 different playable characters? I don't see them doing that. So, if they are ever going to introduce Noob Saibot in this game, it seems like it'd be a good opportunity to make someone new Noob Saibot, kind of like how they did with a lot of other characters, like making Kuai Liang Scorpion. And actually, having just said that out loud, I have an entirely new idea, so go ahead and forget about Bi-Han's father. No. I know who needs to be Noob Saibot. So it is hinted at in Smoke's ending that they end up taking in a little homeless boy who tries to rob Smoke, and they try making him the newest initiate for the Shiraryu. And it turns out he has a bunch of talent. So this kid that they are raising as an assassin, well, that happens to be a very young version of this universe's Hanzo Hisashi. So he's not Scorpion here. He's just being trained. And since Kuai Liang is already Scorpion, and we already have Bihan being Sub-Zero, we have a gap, a void, a roster spot to fill. What if we have this young Hanzo Hisashi with a bunch of potential and talent get killed off and then turned into Noob Saibot? What if the old Scorpion Hanzo becomes Noob Saibot? That could be kind of cool. And again, these are all guesses and hypotheticals and incredibly unlikely to happen. But if you're mixing around who is who in the roster, that's not impossible and could actually kind of make sense considering they went out of their way to make Hanzo part of Smoke's ending. We shall see. Again, I am recording this on Groundhog's Day, February 2nd. So we will see in a few months. I'm either going to be incredibly wrong, which I most likely will be, or there's a very slim chance I nail this. And if it happens, I'm not going to claim that I had any amazing prediction here. It's just going to be pure luck and me fucking around and trying to stall for time as I try to reach the end of this episode. So, yeah. Fingers crossed for pure dumb luck, because then I have something to record later on that's going to be hilarious. And you know what? I'm kind of liking the direction this is suddenly going in this video. A bunch of random theories or guesses about the future of this game that are almost guaranteed to be incorrect, but why not? I don't care if it's going to be wrong. We're going to have some fun with it. So let me reel it back in just a little bit, and let's focus on the very end, the ending to Mortal Kombat 1. So when the credits were rolling, they went out of their way to show us a few of the alternate dimension characters on the Pyramid of Argus plotting for what I assume is going to be a major part of the DLC story. The thing is, I don't know how major of a part it is going to be. I'm a little bit skeptical, because Mortal Kombat, they've done this to me before, and I would not be surprised if they did this to me again, because let's think about that. Back in Mortal Kombat 9, the game ended with the cliffhanger that Shinnok and Quan Chi were going to be the next big bad enemies of Mortal Kombat 10, which they kind of were, but the whole plot where Shinnok was going to invade Earth was over in the very first chapter of Mortal Kombat 10. He would eventually resurface for like the last 2 chapters, but he's not even in that game for most of it. So they built that up at the very end of Mortal Kombat 9, and they basically squashed it for most of the game in the very first chapter. Okay, fine. That's a one-off occurrence. But then, Mortal Kombat 10 does another cliffhanger. At the very end of it, we get the introduction of Dark Raiden, the corrupted Raiden, the not quite evil, but definitely not such a good guy anymore Raiden. And we have him threatening Liu Kang and Kitana, who are Revenants, Revenant Liu Kang and Kitana, who are now the king and queen of the Netherrealm. And it makes it seem like, that's going to be a major part of the next game. What's going to happen with corrupted Raiden? What's going to happen with the Revenant king and queen Kitana and Liu Kang? Well, they kind of squashed that storyline in like a chapter and a half as well. Because corrupted Raiden, he is just swapped out for Raiden from the past, who is still a good guy, and that happens right after Chapter 2. And then Liu Kang and Kitana in their Revenant forms, like they're in the game. They are bad guys. But they take an immediate backseat to Kronika, the Titan of Time. So even though they were hinted at as being major parts of the next game, they really weren't that influential in that game. I feel like Mortal Kombat 1... or at least how Mortal Kombat 11 hinted at Mortal Kombat 1 at the very end of Aftermath, there really were no curveballs there other than revealing that both endings were correct. But if we look at how Mortal Kombat 9's cliffhanger and Mortal Kombat 10's cliffhanger were squashed almost immediately, I cannot help but be curious if the Mortal Kombat 1 cliffhanger with the Titan Havoc is going to do the exact same thing, and Titan Havoc is really not going to be the big bad guy of the next DLC story. What if he is just what causes the big bad of the next story to happen? What if Titan Havoc somehow causes Onaga the Dragon King to be the next big bad enemy? So again, it is February 2nd. We got a ways to go before the DLC comes out and the story continues. But let's revisit this whenever the time comes and see how wrong or how right I was. And again, even if I am right, pure dumb luck if that occurs. I am just throwing out a random guess. Alright, and while we are fighting this mini-boss Kitana, I'm going to go ahead and start the outro for this episode. That way I can kind of cut everything off, either at the very end of this fight or shortly after the end of this fight. So, what has happened in this episode where I'm going through the Invasions mode Season 2? Well, we found out that Nitara has brought in a bunch of alternate dimension Veternians, vampires, to invade our timeline and basically just use us as food and also infect a bunch of our allies with the blood curse or blood infection or whatever the hell vampires do to regular people when they do not turn them into vampires themselves. All of that is happening. And that's about it. We've been wandering around the realms fighting off, I suppose you would call them allies of Nitara, brainwashed people working for Nitara. Doesn't matter, they're working with Nitara. We've been beating them up, and slowly but surely just kind of depleting her ranks, and eventually we will fight her herself. For now, though, we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you for watching this episode of Thor's Entertainment as we are going through the Invasions mode. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to check out some other stuff that I do on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I happen to have a series called Fatal Friday and a playlist for it under the Mortal Kombat 1 Online playlist. And yeah, you get to check out a bunch of brutality and fatality hunting in the Combat League for Mortal Kombat 1 if you check those out. And I also have playthroughs of the story modes for the other Mortal Kombat games. So yeah, enjoy that if that is your thing. That's going to be it from me though. Thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you next time.